Hello everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I, of course, am just another heavy metal maniac, and today I'm doing another discography ranking. Today I'm going to be going over all of the albums from none other than Norwegian black metal titans Darkthrone. Darkthrone, of course, one of the most popular, most beloved bands in black metal, and all of metal in general, perhaps. This was one of the bands personally responsible for getting me into black metal. I do love a lot of this band's albums. And, yeah, they have a lot of albums, 21 to be exact, which, yeah, is kind of crazy. And, this band has a very, very interesting discography, to say the least. Like, they just kind of do whatever they want, frankly, and we get all kinds of different sounds in their discography as a result. And, yeah, without further ado, enough of my ramblings, let's just get right into the ranking, eh? So, coming in at number 21, coming in dead last, it is Goatlord, released in 1996. This is by far and away the worst Darkthrone album in my opinion. This album is pretty much just the leftover demos of their death metal days when they were a death metal band. Because, you know, Peaceville kind of just like, hey, you guys need to put out like an album, so they just kind of threw all this together. It's a bunch of old demos that they put vocals on. There's like weird pitch-shifted vocals where it sounds like it's a female singer, but nope, that's just their weird pitch-shifted vocals. Production of this album is absolutely terrible because it's just unpolished. It riffs, it's all just buried under tons and tons of mud. None of the songs are like memorable in my opinion, and even if there are memorable moments, again, they're just buried under horrible production. The vocals are laughably bad. There really is nothing about this album that I enjoy, which is for me why it lands at number 21. It's dead last. Yeah, Goatlord, it's just not good at all in my opinion. I debated even including it on my list because I wasn't sure really if it is even really a studio album, because it is basically just a collection of old demos, but it's regarded by most as being a studio album, so I guess it is. And in that case, it's easily their worst album, so which is why, again, it's at 21. Alright, coming in at number 20, it is Darkthrones and Black Flags, released in 2008, sorry. This album is kind of the final album in the trilogy of kind of crust punk albums, and this is really just personal bias on my part because I am not into crust punk really at all, or even punk in general is very, I don't get into most of it with the exception of a couple bands, and crust punk is no different. Yeah, to me, this album, there just really isn't anything that really stands out to me on this album. It's just kind of, you know, it's just there for me. It's the final album, again, like I said, the crust punk trilogy. You know, whatever. It's just really not my thing. It's really just not my style, which is why for me it lands at number 20. I probably will never listen to it again, so, you know, that's why for me it lands at number 20. Coming in at number 19, it is FOAD, which stands for Fuck Off and Die. Very punky title. This was, of course, the second album of the crust punk era. This, to me, this album is just not that great in my opinion. This is just pretty much my reasons for disliking Darkthrones and Black Flags. Our GOAT says the same for FOAD, which is just I'm not into crust punk, so this album really doesn't do anything for me. I feel like these albums are also kind of too long for what they are. They're all like 38 minutes long. I think this FOAD is actually 40 minutes long, if I remember correctly. And I don't know, for what it is, I feel like it's just too long, and the songs just kind of aren't interesting enough for my interest to be maintained. So yeah, again, this is just personal bias. I'm not in the crust punk at all, so this whole trilogy of albums doesn't do anything for me, which is why FOAD lands at number 19. Alright, coming in at number 18, it is The Cult is Alive. This is the first kind of album where they've detoured into crust punk territory, and my complaints about this album are exactly the same as the two albums I listed previously. It's just, again, I really just don't like anything really about this album. None of the songs really jump out at me. There's nothing about this album that I would ever really, I wouldn't reach for this album over any of their other albums, frankly. But yeah, I don't care for this album really at all, which is why for me it lands at 18. I mean, it's alright, but it's not that great in my opinion, so, you know, that's why it's number 18. Right, now that the whole crust punk thing is kinda out of the way, let's talk about my number 17 choice, which is Plague Wielder, released in 2001. This album is kinda, I don't know, this album really just, I listen to it, and it really just doesn't jump out at me at all. I listen to this album, and it doesn't, it's just kind of there. It just kind of blends in the background. I feel like all the songs are kind of too long, and they really just aren't interesting, really, to me. Again, there's really just, again, the songs are just kind of boring. The sound just kind of goes by. It's like, okay, that's a song. Now that's a song. Now that's a song. For pretty much the whole album. Yeah, this is why it's 17. Just nothing really jumps out at me. I don't think it's terrible necessarily, but I just think it's a very just kind of bland and very uninteresting album. Alright, coming in at number 16 now, it is Total Death, released in 1996. This album suffers from kind of being wedged in between two albums that I really, really like, which is why why it got knocked down, because this came out after Panzerfaust, and if you ignore Goatlord, this album came out before Ravishing Grimness, which we'll get to, and I really like both those albums, so this album kind of suffers as a result. But also, I don't know, to me, this album, it feels like they were trying to kind of do, kind of try to follow this trend that was set on Panzerfaust, but they really kind of just didn't hit the mark as hard, in my opinion. Again, a lot of these songs for me just kind of blend in the background. They don't really jump out at me a whole lot, but there are some decent songs on here. Like, I think Blasphemer is honestly a pretty good song. It's easily my favorite song up here. Black Winged is pretty good too. Oh yeah, this album is not very super standout to me. It's just kind of, again, it has the same problem with Plague Wielder, where it just kind of blends in the background, and there aren't really enough standout moments for me to want to return to it. But I'd like it more than Plague Wielder, because there are a couple songs on here that I think are actually good, so it's why for me it lands at number 16. Coming in at number 15, it's Circle the Wagons, released in 2010. This is the first album that kind of came out after the crust punk trilogy. I don't know, there's still crust punk elements on this album, but this is the album that was kind of this album is kind of the transitionary period between the crust punk era and kind of the modern era of Darkthrone, which is this kind of blackened heavy metal, speed metal type thing. And to me, I think this is definitely, I like this album more than the crust punk albums, that's for sure, because is just, again, them embracing the more heavy metal kind of style riffs on this album and stuff. And Fender has actually described this album as their own brand of heavy metal, speed metal punk, so that's pretty good. That kind of sums up what this album is in a fairly good phrase. But yeah. I mean, there are some songs on here that I think are good. I Am the Graves of the 80s isn't bad. Black Mountain Totem is actually a pretty good song. Eyes Burst at Dawn is a pretty good song too. I enjoy this album, but I don't enjoy it as much as other albums, which is why for me it's number 15. But I like it more than any of the crust punk albums. Like I said, this album is the bridge between the crust punk trilogy and the more modern blackened heavy metal Darkthrone era. So yeah, it is a transitionary album, but and again, it's got good songs on it, but it's not one I'm going to return to super often, so that's why it's lower on my list. My number 14 choice is Sardonic Wrath, released in 2004. Yeah, this album to me is kind of fairly meat and potatoes black metal. This was the final album that came out before the whole crust punk thing. There are some really good songs on here. Straightening Sharks in Heaven is an awesome song title and a really cool song. Alle Gegen Alle, which I don't know, it's Norwegian, I don't know what that means really, but that's a good song. Sacrificing to the God of Doubt is pretty good. Hate is the Law, pretty good too. Yeah, this is just kind of fairly meat and potatoes, very straightforward, riffy, black metal. One thing that kind of knocks this album down a bit for me is the intro. It's 2.5 minutes of pretty much white noise. It just really annoys me when bands do shit like that. It's like, why have 2.5 minutes of just white noise? Put a song there, do something, you know? But yeah, Sardonic Wrath, this is a pretty good song, a pretty good album, in my opinion. But this band, I think, have a lot of pretty good albums, so that's why for me it's at number 14. Alright, coming in now at number 13, it's Hate Them, released in 2003. This to me and Sardonic Wrath, Hate Them and Sardonic Wrath to me are kind of interchangeable. I feel pretty much equally the same about both of them, but I give the slight edge to Hate Them because it doesn't have a pointless intro white noise, and there are some good songs on here. Fucked Up and Ready to Die, Striving for a Piece of Lucifer, In Honor of Thy Name. Yeah, this is pretty much kind of the same deal as Sardonic Wrath. It's fairly straightforward, just kind of riffy black metal, and I think it's I think for what it is, it's very solid, and I do enjoy it. But it's just, it's just lower on my list because this band has a lot of albums that I like, so that's why for me, Hate Them is at number 13. Alright, coming in now at number 12, it is one of the most radically different sounding albums in Darkthrone's entire catalog, because this is not black metal at all, really. It's Underground Resistance, released in 2013. This album is pretty much just their tribute to, classic metal, pretty much. Like, there's a lot of tropes here, just like, traditional heavy metal, speed metal. You get hints of thrash metal and doom. There's a lot of stuff on here that I would say is comparable, of course, to, like, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, I'd say even Exciter, Angel Witch. I get a lot of kind of Angel Witch vibes. There's even hints of like kind of Slayer, Celtic Frost, and like Seraph Ungol too. Which believe me, there's a lot of Celtic Frost and Seraph Ungol in some of this band's later material. But yeah, I think for what it is, for just kind of a 80s worship metal album, I think for what it is, I think it's pretty good. And there are some really awesome songs in here, like Lesser Men is an awesome song. The Ones You Left Behind is pretty good. Leave No Cross Unturned is probably the best song here. It's kind of the big closing epic song, very thrashy, super awesome song. I really dig that song in particular. Yeah, for what it is, I do really enjoy this album. Like I said, this is not like black metal really at all. This is just pure worship and tribute to 80s metal, and I love a lot of 80s metal, and I do also enjoy a lot of bands that are just worship and tribute to 80s metal, so I'm perfectly fine with this album, and I do enjoy it for what it is. For me, Underground Resistance lands at number 12. At number 11, it is Astral Fortress, released in 2022. This album is kind of just Darkthrone kind of doing what modern Darkthrone is nowadays, which is kind of, again, this blackened heavy metal type thing. There's a lot of like Celtic Frost worship on this album. There's elements, again, of just traditional heavy metal, speed metal type thing. And for what this is, I think this album is pretty good. There's some really good songs in here again. Caravan of Broken Ghosts is pretty good. Impeccable Caverns of Satan. Kevorkian Times is pretty good. The Sea Beneath the Seas of the Sea is a kind of weird song title, but I do enjoy that song. Yeah, for me, I enjoy this album. It's just, it's kind of more middle of the road Darkthrone for me, because I think out of their kind of more modern era where they're doing this, again, this kind of modern era of Darkthrone, this is probably my least favorite, but I still think this is a pretty good album. I would, return to it, but it's just, there's other albums that I like more, so that's why for me, it lands at number 11. Alright, coming in now at number 10, it is Arctic Thunder, released in 2016. This album is kind of the first album in the modern Darkthrone era, and that's kind of the thing with this band. Their sound comes in eras, so, they did their brief death metal era, they've done obviously the Unholy Trinity, and they did the kind of the Panzerfaust era, as I like to call it, and then they did the crust punk thing. Now they're into this blackened heavy metal era. Yeah, I think this is kind of the first album. This came out after, obviously, Underground Resistance, which was just kind of full-blown heavy metal, but now this has a lot more black metal elements. The recording is very lo-fi. It's not, like, as lo-fi as, like, some of their other albums, but it is pretty lo-fi. Again, I dig the atmosphere and the vibe on this album. It's kind of cold and grim, but it's also got cool, speed metal, heavy metal riffs. Some really good songs on here again, like Inbred Vermin is a pretty good song, Throw Me Through the Marshes, Deep Lake Trespass, The Wyoming Distance, that song title kind of cracks me up a little bit. I don't know, maybe just because I think Wyoming's a funny word, but whatever. Yeah, Arctic Thunder. This is a pretty solid album in my opinion. Again, kind of more middle of the road for me. It's not my favorite out of this more modern Darkthrone era, but it's very enjoyable still. So that's just why for me it's at number 10. At number 9 now, I have It Beckons Us All, released in 2024. This is their newest album to date. Obviously, I did a review for this album back when I was still interested in doing reviews, but which I kind of moved away from that now. But I was very enthusiastic when this album came out. I think I gave it like a 4 or a 4.5. I think I maybe overrated it a little bit because you know, the excitement of, oh, you know, new Darkthrone album, this is sick, you know. But I think this is still a really good album. Like, I do still enjoy this album quite a bit. There's a lot of Celtic Frost worship on here. To me, this album is pretty much just like Celtic Frost meets Sirfungol because it's heavy metal. It's heavy metal, but it's also got a lot of kind of doom, like Sirfungol does, you know, where they're kind of the blend of like that epic heavy metal / US power metal sound that with the big doom elements. And so yeah, I dig this album quite a bit. I do enjoy a lot of the songs on here. Black Dawn Affiliation I think is really good. The Bird People of Nordland is a pretty awesome song. The Heavy Hand, The Lone Pines of the Lost Planet. Yeah, this is a very solid album in my opinion. I do really enjoy this album. Again, Celtic Frost, Sirfungol vibes, which I love both those bands, so, you know, I'm fine with Celtic Frost worship and Sirfungol worship, so yeah, this album tickles that kind of itch in my brain, you know. And, yeah, not much else to say. It's an enjoyable album. For me, It Beckons Us All is number 9. Coming in now at number 8, it is Old Star, released in 2019. Out of the modern Darkthrone era, this is one of my favorites. Because I feel like on this album they embraced a lot more of a doomy type vibe on this album. There's a lot of kind of, I feel like, nods to the old school doom metal. There's definitely stuff here that's kind of reminiscent of like Candlemass, even Count Raven. I get a lot of kind of Count Raven vibes on this. Maybe even hints of like, even though they're not that old school, there's kind of hints of maybe Reverend Bazaar on this album a little bit as well. Yeah, and there are again some really awesome songs on here. I Muffle Your Inner Choir. It's really good. Hardship with Scots, Alpman, Duke of Glow, title track's pretty cool. Yeah, this is a very solid album in my opinion. This is one of my favorite, you know, of their modern era. Yeah, again, I'm a big doom metal fan, so the doomy aspect of this album really resonated with me quite a lot, and I enjoy it. So yeah, for me, it's number 8. My number 7 choice is Ravishing Grimness, released in 1999. This is a very kind of, I feel like it's a sort of overlooked album, really, in Darkthrone's catalog. I don't see a lot of people really talk about this album, which is kind of a shame, because I do really enjoy this album. I think it is a solid Darkthrone album. Is kind of a lot of thrashy vibes, kind of like Celtic Frost again. There's a lot of Bathory vibes on this album, so I talked about Total Death and how that came out in between Panzerfaust and this album. Again, ignore Goatlord, because let's just pretend Goatlord never happened, because it sucks. This album, to me, they should have just kind of cut out Total Death and Goatlord, and this album should have come out after Panzerfaust, because this is kind of the perfect follow-up to Panzerfaust in a lot of ways. I think they're similar, but I think Panzerfaust is still stronger, which we'll get to. We'll get to that album. But yeah, Ravishing Grimness, I think this is a really solid album. I dig the rev, I dig the riffs, I dig, you know, just the whole vibe, the cold, grim vibe on this album. Lifeless is a great song, Claws of Time, Across the Vacuum, title track's really cool, To Death Under the King. Yeah, there's some really strong songs on here. This is a really good album. I do really enjoy this album. For me, though, it is number 7, which, you know, again, when it comes to bands like this, you just gotta, at a certain point, it's just like assigning numbers to albums, right? Especially with a big discography like this one, like 21 albums is a lot to go through. So, yeah, for me, Ravishing Grimness is number 7. It is top 10. I do really enjoy it. So, yeah, moving on. Number 6 for me is Eternal Hails, released in 2021. This is my favorite of their more modern era. This is my favorite Darkthrone album post 90s. And man, I really dig this album. I don't know what it is. This album just kind of has a vibe and an atmosphere that I really dig. Like, I think it's definitely the rawest and the most lo-fi out of the modern Darkthrone era, and again, to me, I feel like they just did this album for this style. I feel like they just did it. They kind of perfected it here because there's great riffs, great atmosphere. There's again a lot of Celtic Frost vibes. I've probably said the word Celtic Frost. I've probably said Celtic Frost like 50 times so far, but that's because this is a lot of Celtic Frost worship. Yeah, I dig this album. I really love the song Lost Arcane City of Upakra. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but I feel like that was a very unique and a very kind of cool song for them. His master's voice is amazing. Hate Clo, Wake at the Awakened. This album to me, it just kind of, again, I can't really explain why I like this album as much as I do. It just really kind of resonates with me quite a lot. There is a lot about this album is just, again, it has a vibe that I just really dig, a vibe that the other albums of this modern era of Darkthrone really kind of weren't able to deliver fully, and this album is just awesome. I'm gonna stop before I repeat myself some more, but yeah, Eternal Hails, I do love it. It's at number 6. Alright, now we come to the top 5, and I've said this before, I'll say it again. When it comes to discography rankings, numbers like 5 through 1 might as well all be number 1. These albums are pretty much all kind of tied for me in terms of how much I love them. But my number 5 choice is a very underrated album, in my opinion. Soulside Journey, released in 1991. This was their ugly, heavy debut, and this is one of the most radically different sounding albums in Darkthrone's entire catalog, because this is not black metal even remotely. This is just pure 90s old school death metal. Yeah, again, I think this is a very overlooked album, which is kind of easy to understand why, because, you know, this album, it sounds nothing like the Darkthrone that we would, you know, come to know and love, but I do wish they would kind of experiment more with the sound that on this album, because I think for what it is, they really came out swinging, and I do really, really love this album. This is just, again, pure. This is pretty much them kind of doing what was popular in Sweden at the time, which was obviously this whole HM2 death metal thing. You know, bands like Entombed and Dismember, Grave, all that stuff were just starting to pop up, and I think this album is pretty much just that, rather than this black metal thing that was taking off in Norway. But man, I just love a lot of the songs. Like your Sunrise Over Locust Mortis is awesome. Accumulation of Generalization is a really awesome instrumental with great bass work. There's some really awesome bass and drum work on this album. Neptune Towers, Grave with a View, The Watchtower, title track is also really good. That's kind of the thing. I think Darkthrone is very good at writing awesome title tracks. But yeah, this album, like as I've said, it's underrated. If you are maybe if you haven't listened to this album because you're like, oh, if you're like a death metal fan who's not into black metal, which I know that there is quite a few of those people, but you have not heard this album. If you just love old school Swedish death metal, give this album a listen. If you love Entomb, Dismember, and Grave as well, I think there's a lot of comparisons here that can be made to Grave. Check this album out. I am personally a bigger death metal fan than I am a black metal fan, but I do still love black metal. But yeah, I love just my Swedish death metal, so this album really, really, really tickles my fancies. So yeah, that's why for me it's at number 5, Soulside Journey. Again, underrated as hell. Coming in now at number 4, it is Transylvanian Hunger, released in 1994. This is the final album of the Unholy Trinity, as it is known. And even though it is my least favorite of the Unholy Trinity, I still think this is a fantastic album. Like, seriously, this is Darkthrone at their rawest, at their darkest, at their just most atmospheric and evil sounding. This album is just, again, this album was literally recorded on a 4-track in Fenris's bedroom, if I'm not mistaken, which is fucking awesome. Again, I love the whole kind of DIY aspect of like a lot of these old school black metal bands. I think it's really cool. I get a lot of people, like, that's kind of a reason a lot of people don't like, old school second wave black metal. It's just because the recording's so bad. I mean, I get it if you like that. I understand why, but I for one love the very raw recording. But yeah, anyways, this again, there's just so many amazing songs on this album. The title track is like almost a black metal anthem. If there was like a top 3, if there was like the 3 black metal songs that kind of embodied everything about black metal that was awesome, for me it would be like I Am the Black Wizards by Emperor, Transylvanian Hunger by Darkthrone, and Reaper by Bathory. Those are kind of the three black metal anthems to me. Yeah, so yeah, I do love this album. Again, song titles also got way more Norwegian, so forgive me, I'm gonna butcher a lot of these. Skald of Satan's Soul. I did not say that right. I bet that's a really good song. Slottet I det Fien Graven Taka Heimens Saler. I don't know. As supported by Satan's Spies. I don't know what that song title means, but I like it. But that's a really good song. Yeah, I do really dig this album. I just, again, cold, dark, grim, atmospheric. It's almost hypnotic. Like, you can't, for me, when I listen to something, I just can't help but kind of get sucked into it and just, want to just keep listening to it. And, when it's over, you just kind of want to listen to it again almost. It's awesome. So, yeah, for me, even though it's number 4, I do love this album. But there's just a couple more that beat it out for me. So, Transylvanian Hunger, obviously one of the greatest black metal albums ever made. Number 4. Alright, number 3, I kind of foreshadowed how much I love this album, but yes, it is Panzerfaust, released in 1995. I dig the shit out of this album. This album was a shift for them after the Unholy Trinity. This is the start of the Panzerfaust era, as I like to call it, which is kind of up from Panzerfaust all the way to, I'd say, probably Sardonic Wrath, maybe. But yeah, this album, to me, is... on this album, there was a shift. Like I said, they said when they were making this album, they were kind of inspired more by old school first wave black metal bands like Celtic Frost again and Bathory, and you can definitely hear those influences. They're very prominent on this album. They also said they were inspired by like early Vader, like old school, like back when Vader was still doing their whole demo thing. Which yeah, I think that's really cool too. Yeah, this album to me is really good. I love this album. I love, to me they brought in really cool dynamics, bringing in elements of thrash and doom, and again that you can hear that first wave black metal sound all over this album. Triumphant Gleam is an amazing song. Quintessence is probably my favorite song off of here. I absolutely love that song. It's kind of sludgy, almost. Again, there's that hints of that Celtic Frost doom. Hordes of Nebula is an awesome song. Hans Sista Winter, that's an amazing song as well. The only song I'm really not big on is the final track, Snog. I'm not even gonna attempt saying that, but yeah, the final track, which is kind of like a horn and a spoken word in Norwegian. I don't get that song really, but the rest of the album, at least it's at the end, because the rest of the album is fucking amazing. I love. Again, every other song on this album is really good in my opinion. Love the thrashiness, love the doom, love the the raw black metal, cold, grim. I'm saying a lot of the same words over and over again, but that's kind of what you gotta do with Darkthrone, right? There's a lot of words in the English language, and that's what you gotta do. But yeah, number 3, I do really dig this album. So Panzerfaust, great album. Alright, my number 2 choice is Under a Funeral Moon, released in 1993. Boy, oh boy, this album is it's evil, it is very dark, it's heavy, it's just very kind of, like, you get the vibes of, like, kind of lost in the forest, and you're witnessing, a satanic ritual taking place. That's kind of the vibe I get from this album, really. And again, I love a lot of songs on here. Natasha and Eternal Sleep is amazing. Summer to the Diabolical Holocaust is an awesome song title, but it's also a fucking kick-ass song. Unholy black metal, fairly self-explanatory, but that is such an awesome song as well. To Walk the Infernal Fields is a really good song as well. I love Crossing the Triangle of Flames. Yeah, I do love this album. This was the second Darkthrone album I ever heard, because the first one I ever heard was my number 1 choice, which we'll get to. But then I heard this album afterwards, and this is the album that kind of really cemented my love in a lot of ways for, like, I was like, okay, I can handle this, the raw lo-fi stuff, and I think I really like black metal now. So yeah, this album does kind of hold a special place in my heart for that reason. But yeah, again, I just love this album. I love the recording. I love the riffs. It's just amazing. I do really love it. Yeah, Under a Funeral Moon, amazing album. It would be my number 1, but there is one album that kind of dethrones it for me. And what is that album that dethrones it, you might say? Well, it is none other than A Blaze in the Northern Sky. My god, this album is fucking amazing. Yeah, this was the album that marked their shift into black metal after Soulside Journey. This is like full-on, just kind of black metal. There's still hints of death metal on here. And Fenris has even said that he doesn't consider this album to be like a pure black metal album, but still, like, who gives a fuck? Because this album is fucking amazing. This was the first Darkthrone album I ever heard, so yeah, there is a nostalgic factor in there, but this is also just one of my favorite albums of all time. In general, I absolutely love this album. There are so many songs on here that I think are just absolutely incredible, like Catharian Life Code. What a fantastic opener. In the Shadow of the Horns, Where Cold Winds Blow, The Pagan Winter, title track. I love every song off this album. I could listen to this album probably for like 6 months straight and still want to listen to it. Yeah. This album is just kind of, to me, the perfect Darkthrone album in a lot of ways. It is, again, it's raw, it's heavy, it's evil. It's, sorry, nothing. Sorry about that. Again, I know I've been repeating myself for like the past 20 minutes probably, but my god, this album, it's really just otherworldly at points. It is one of the most important metal albums ever made. This album is kind of the embodiment, really, of the spirit of the true Norwegian black metal in a lot of ways. This is such an important release in that genre, and I absolutely love it. This is, I believe, was it 26th or 25th on my top 50 favorite metal albums, so yeah, I do absolutely love this album, and I probably telegraphed that this was going to be my number one a while ago, but yeah, again, this is just an amazing album, and really not much else to say. That's pretty much the end of this video. If you made it to the end of this video, you are awesome, and I appreciate you. Consider leaving a like if you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment down below. Tell me, what do you think about these albums? What do you think about my placements? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. And, yeah, subscribe, because I do have a lot more content coming your way. And, well, that about does it. I'll see you all sometime in the future. I, of course, am just another heavy metal maniac. In the meantime, all of you take care and have a great day. Bye-bye.